This is the MG ZS EV, a small SUV that now comes with big driving range. That's right, it's an electric little SUV, and this is the long range model with almost 40% extra driving range over the more affordable versions of this car. So should you spend extra, will you get that claimed driving range? And is the MG ZS EV going to be the right electric small SUV for you? Stay tuned and you'll find out. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe and hit like if you haven't already, and stay tuned. I've got a whole heap more electric SUV and car content coming your way. The MG ZS EV range comes with 3 different grades available, including one of the most affordable electric cars on the market, the entry-level ZS Excite, and it does come with a pretty exciting price tag of $44,990 drive away, which is very good considering you still get a bunch of really good standard equipment, including LED lights, 17-inch alloy wheels. There's also cloth trim on the inside, a 10-inch media screen, and digital instrumentation as well. So it does feel pretty good for the money that you're paying. If you want a few more extras, then you could step up to the Essence grade, which is $4,000 more, gets you a big panoramic sunroof. You also get leatherish trim and also heated seats too. So that's just some of the highlights that you get if you step up that extra level. And then there's this one here, which is the long range version. It's $7,000 more and it adds 120 kilometers of driving range for that extra cash. There's no real other additions when it comes to spec except for tinted rear windows. So you'll have to make up your own mind whether you think spending an extra $7,000 for 120 Ks of range is worth it to you. If you think a small electric SUV is going to be right for you, then you should probably also be checking out the BYD Atto 3, which is a very impressive little thing. It costs a little bit less than this car in some specs. There are 2 different versions, a standard range and a long range. And if you choose the long range one, it's got a little bit less driving range than the long range MG ZS, but it also costs a little bit less too. I think it looks fantastic and it has some interesting features on the inside that, well, set it apart from other SUVs out there. And if you just want an electric MG and you're not sure that the ZS is right for you, then you should be looking at the MG4 because it is an all-new model with new technology and different packaging, and it looks a whole lot different to this car. And if you like the look of it, then you're going to appreciate the price for it too, because the most affordable version of that car is about $45,000 and has longer range than the long-range version of this car. So if you don't want it to necessarily be an SUV that answers your EV question, then you should be checking out the MG4, I reckon. But if budget isn't your biggest concern and you still want a really practical, smallish, SUV-ish model, then I reckon you should be checking out the Kia Niro as another alternative. I've been living with one of those for a few months now as a long-term vehicle in my garage, or my driveway at least, and it has been a really, really likable and accommodating family second car for us. It's got a big boot, it's got a big back seat, family friendliness is all ticked, lots of safety and a 7-year warranty as well. It costs a lot more, but I reckon you're getting a pretty good car for your money. As I already mentioned, this is a little SUV at less than 4.4 meters. By my reckoning, it's one of the smallest, if not the smallest, electric SUVs that you can buy today. And it doesn't necessarily feel small on the inside. You can skip ahead to that if you want to, or hang around because I'll show you the back seat and front seat space in a sec. But first, let's check out the boot and see if it's big enough. Boot space in the MG ZS EV is okay. It's not necessarily huge, but then again, it does have some practicality elements to it. So there's 359 litres of cargo capacity, but you can lower the boot floor and that opens up a fair bit more space. And that makes it a pretty practical little option. You can fit a pram in here and a couple of shopping bags or some luggage if you need to. There's also underneath there a space to store your charge cables, and there's a tyre repair kit. No spare wheel because it's an EV and most EVs don't have spare wheels because it helps save weight. And there's also these little netted sections at the edges of the boot behind the wheel arches. They're really good if you are going to the shops and grabbing a bottle of milk or something like that because it stops it from falling all over the place. So pretty practical, I reckon. The interior of the ZS EV hasn't changed all that much over the years, but it is still a pretty nice place to sit. It does have some pretty clever finishes in here as well. I like the fact that there is red stitching throughout this cabin, and it does add some kind of appeal to the interior, because otherwise it would just be a bit of a black on black fest in here. But the materials are quite nice. You've got this etched sort of checkered finish across the dashboard here. That's also on the seats. Like I said, the stitching of redness everywhere on the dash. You've got it on the steering wheel, on the center console, on the seats as well. So it does have a real sort of complete and finished feel to the cabin for the most part. When it comes to storage, you've got some pretty good options. You've got a pair of cup holders here with a little cover, a roller cover in there as well. You've got a wireless phone charger, little center console bin in there. There's a pair of bottle holders with pretty big door pockets actually, and it is pretty well sorted when it comes to all that stuff. Now, the biggest issue I have with this car is the media system, or the interaction that you have with this system itself. So there is a strip of toggle switches down below. So you've got climate control, you've got fan control, you've got the front and rear demisters. You can switch the fan on or off there as well. There's also volume and a home button too. So it does have tactile control for the most part, for most of the things that you will want to interact with. It's just that when you want to use the screen, there seems to be menus buried behind menus. So for example, if you just want to put the recirc air conditioning on, you have to go through the fan section, then there's a separate button that you have to press. Same for the seat heaters. There are no buttons for the seat heaters. You have to go through the screen to do it. And also it does have this swipe functionality to it, which means that there are menus hidden that you probably won't know are there until you spend a bit of time getting to know this screen. Let's check out the back seat and see what the space is like back there. For a small SUV, this is one of the smaller small SUVs as well, it does have quite a bit of space back here. This seat's set for my height, 182 centimeters or 6 foot, and I've got enough knee room to fit. I've got pretty good foot room as well. Headroom's not too bad either, and it does have that massive sunroof as well, which does add a lot to this cabin. So if you are looking at an MG ZS EV, I would suggest buy the mid or top spec one where you get this standard, because it's huge and it really does add something to the ambience in here. So when it comes to the practicality elements of the back seat, it's pretty good. You've got a pair of map pockets, directional air vents, there's a USB-A and a USB-C charge port down there. And there is no fold down armrest, no cup holders, but there are bottle holders, or, you know, cubbies big enough for bottles in the doors. Plus there are ISOFIX points in the window seats and 3 top tether points. So if you do need a family SUV that's electric and affordable, this is pretty good if you ask me. And it is spacious enough to fit 3 adults across the back at a pinch. And the fact that it's got this flat-ish floor does make it a lot more accommodating if that's what you need it for. This is the long range version, so it comes with the bigger battery pack, a 72.6 kilowatt hour lithium ion liquid cooled battery pack. And it comes with a front electric motor, front wheel drive as a result of that. And it's got 115 kilowatts and 280 Newton meters of torque, which isn't huge, but it's definitely enough for this type of car. Now, if you choose the shorter range versions, you get a smaller battery, 51.1 kilowatt hour battery pack is what they come with, still front wheel drive, but they get extra power. So they're 130 kilowatts as opposed to 115. Maybe that's to do with helping you get that range out of the battery pack. It also means that the short range versions, or shorter range versions, are a little bit faster, 0 to 100, 8.2 versus 8.5 for the long range version. So all of that might matter to you, or it might just be that you just want the most range you can get. And this long range version, despite having a much bigger battery pack in terms of kilowatt hour capacity, isn't actually that much heavier. It only weighs 10 kilos more than the model below it. I reckon MG could have put some extra storage in here. A lot of EVs have a front trunk or a frunk where you can store your charge cables, for instance. Instead, they're in the boot. Charging for the MG ZS EV is right here. That's where it takes care of your charging needs. There's a Type 2 CCS plug here. So that means it is capable of DC charging up to 80 kilowatts. So it's not necessarily the fastest charging EV out there, but that should mean that you'll be able to get 0 to 80% in about 63 minutes for the long range version, a little bit less for the shorter range versions because they've got smaller batteries. There's also AC charging, as you would expect, so you can charge at home. There's a 7 or 11 kilowatt wall box option from MG. If you choose the 11 kilowatt one, you have to have 3-phase power at your house, and it should mean that you'll be able to recharge this version, the long range one, in about 8 hours. If you use a 7 kilowatt box, it should take closer to 11.5 or 12 hours. So it's an overnight charge job for this one in particular, and a little bit less if you choose one of the shorter range versions. It's got that EV torque that you've probably heard about before. It's just heaps of pulling power from basically a standing start, and the roll-on acceleration. So when you just put your foot down as you're rolling along, it is quick. It does push you back in your seat, and it gathers speed really well. The thing with it is that it isn't the quickest. And it's obviously because this one has been tuned more for the long range driving than for the outright performance. And look, I've been driving in normal or eco mode most of the time in this car. However, there is a sport mode, and it does make things a fair bit more speedy if that's what you need at that point in time. It won't be the most efficient in that driving scenario though, so keep that in mind. And in terms of the drive experience, like the ride and handling and that sort of stuff, well, it's okay. It's not the best. The ride in particular could be better. And I say that because it is, I guess you'd call it pitchy, where it sort of feels like it's doing a lot of nose to tail bobbing. And in particular, the rear does feel like it's very firmly sprung. So it sort of feels like if you go over any sort of bump that at the rear of the car, it'll bump the front of the nose sort of downwards like that. And even to a degree, when you're on cruise control and you're on the highway, and if you go over a big undulation in the road, you might notice that it can actually upset the cruise control, and you sort of feel like you get this little surge of torque because you take so much, I guess, weight off the front axle that it sort of just accelerates a little bit faster. So all that is to say that it could be more refined in terms of the suspension compliance and the comfort levels on offer. But I wouldn't say that it's necessarily uncomfortable, just that it could be better. And when it comes to the steering, look, it's okay as well. It's accurate enough and direct enough in terms of the action when you do turn the steering wheel. However, it does have this sort of strange feel to it, especially if, say, for example, you're in a slow speed traffic jam and you happen to be turning a corner at the same time. You'll notice that there's a weird sort of sticky sensation to the steering, so it doesn't necessarily feel very fluid when you're turning the wheel at really low speeds. But at higher speeds, it's fine. It does have the active safety tech you would expect, so there's lane keeping assist, and thankfully, in this particular Chinese SUV, you can press the button and turn it off, and it will stay off, even when you get out of the car and stop the car and turn it off. So every time I've got back into this car, I haven't had to turn off lane keeping assist, and I appreciate that because the lane keeping system in this isn't fantastic. Another thing I should mention is the fact that there are 3 different regen braking modes. I've got it set in the most severe, that's level 3. It doesn't come to a full stop, so it's not like single pedal driving, which you might have heard about in some other EVs, but it will slow down to, I guess, jogging pace or even fast walking pace if you let the brakes do their own thing and just pull you up to a stop. So I've just let it slowly pull me back to almost stopping speed. So that gives you an idea of how slow it is to slow down, for example. Now, obviously, you've also got a regular brake pedal that you can use like a regular brake pedal, and that means, now obviously you've also got just normal braking that you can do, and it does have pretty good brake pedal feel for an electric car. Sometimes some vehicles that are fully electric or even part electric can feel a little bit weird when it comes to the braking response and the pedal feel, but this one, yeah, it's kind of nice and natural, which is good. The surround view camera is not fantastic. It's great that it has it, but it'd be even better if the camera lenses were of a higher quality so they could feed a better image to the screen, because it's not a really good image. It's really boxy, and it also always pops up when you are going at lower speeds and you've got your indicator on, which can be annoying if, for example, you're running Apple CarPlay or SatNav or whatever it may be on your phone, and you just need to see what is on the screen coming up next and the little camera system comes up instead. You can X out of it every single time, but then you have to do that every single time. Maybe there's a way that you can turn it off, but I haven't managed to find it. And another thing I'll just say is the drive is let down a little bit by the driving position. For someone my size, I find that I wish I could have a little bit more reach on the steering wheel, bring it a little bit closer to me so I could sit just a little bit further back, but there is no reach adjustment on this steering wheel. I should have mentioned that in the interior section. Whoops. Overall, I don't think this is the best electric car to drive, but if you're the sort of person who doesn't really care about what it drives like, then it could be the right car for you. So how efficient is this MG electric SUV? Well, the official combined figure for the energy consumption is 17.7 kilowatt hours per 100 Ks. Now, if you're not sure, that is pretty good. If you think of it as like a petrol or diesel car, the lower the number, the better. Some EVs of this size are around the same sort of figure, maybe up to 20 kilowatt hours per 100 Ks. So this is pretty good in terms of claimed efficiency. And when it comes to real world efficiency, you'll see the figure that I saw across my test in this car on your screen now. And that was very impressive to me. The pre-facelift version of the MG ZS EV came with the maximum 5-star ANCAP safety rating, but now ANCAP calls that the old model. And so this version, officially at least, isn't a 5-star ANCAP performer. But it still has all the stuff you would expect to achieve that kind of rating, including autonomous emergency braking with pedestrian and cyclist detection, and there's lane keeping assistance as well, and all models come with a surround view camera. You have to buy one of the higher grade versions, so the Essence or the top-spec long-range model, if you want blind spot monitoring and rear cross traffic alert, however. There's airbag coverage inside as well, but there is no front center airbag. You get dual front side and full-length curtain coverage. The MG range comes with a 7-year unlimited kilometre warranty, and the battery pack is covered for 7 years as well. And when it comes to cap price servicing, get this car has 14 years or 280,000 Ks of cap price service cover. That means that the service intervals are every 2 years or every 40,000 kilometres, which is extensive. That's a very long service interval. And the service costs are a little bit high when you consider that it's every 2 years, but on an annual basis, it's about $315 a year in terms of maintenance, which isn't too bad, I reckon. There's also 7 years of roadside assist included with this car too. I can see why you would choose the MG ZS EV as your EV SUV of choice, although I probably wouldn't choose it. I reckon if I was buying an MG EV, it would have to be the new MG4 because it just seems to make so much more sense on a financial level, and it has more range on offer as standard, even in the entry-level grade. But tell me which one you would pick if you choose an MG EV or an MG at all, or choose something different. I'd love to know your thoughts. Hit me up in the comments section below. And if you haven't already, like and subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.